The first fire-pear split provision minister Maud Varon's marble floor before the last tree in Cecily Rowan's orchard had finished dying. 20 royal laborers dragged the final black-rooted tree from the winter soil, while Dragon King Auberon Firth stood above the crown ash terraces in a dark riding cloak, his face cut cold against the snow. Cecily stood below him with ash mud on her hands. For 31 winters, her orchard had fed the hatcheries beyond the capital. Fire-pears carried no flame, but their red-gold flesh held summer heat longer than coal. One pear mashed into broth could keep a newly hatched dragon's lungs warm through a freezing night. This year, Maud had declared the grove diseased. Her inspectors had found white salt crust beneath the roots, brittle leaves, and fruit that blackened before ripening. Their report named soil rot. Their remedy was total removal before the blight reached the royal terraces. Cecily had asked for 3 days to test the lower soil. Auberon had given her 1 hour to surrender the land. Now the last tree came free with a sound like cloth tearing under water. Its roots were not rotten. They were pale, where salt had burned them, and red where living heat still moved beneath the bark. "Stop," Cecily said. The laborers kept pulling. She stepped in front of the winch. A captain reached for her arm. Auberon's voice crossed the terrace. "Do not touch her." The command stopped the captain, not the destruction. Cecily looked up at the king. Years ago, before the crown taught him to speak through distance, Auberon had planted one of these trees beside her. Her daughter Mara had been 3 days old. He had held the sapling straight while Cecily pressed warm ash around its roots. He told her the child would grow beneath a tree that remembered summer. Mara died 26 years later during the winter shortage. The court called the deaths unavoidable consequences of crop failure. Cecily buried her daughter with 2 frozen fire-pear seeds in her palm, not because seeds could warm the dead, but because Cecily could not bear sending Mara into the dark with empty hands. "Let me examine that root." Maud Varon descended the stone steps in a sable-lined coat. Her silver provision keys hung in perfect order at her waist. "The inspection is concluded. The root is alive." Diseased roots often retain heat after fruit failure. Salt does not grow from soil. The terraces lie beneath mineral wind. Winter deposits accumulate, not 6 inches below ground in straight lines. Auberon looked toward the exposed root bed. Then a hatchery bell sounded from the northern valley. 3 slow notes. Cold distress. "The rural stores are already below winter measure," Maud said. "If the blight spreads, every hatchery will demand fruit the crown cannot provide." "And uprooting healthy stock will provide it?" Cecily asked. "Removing contaminated stock protects what remains. What remains is under your lock." Maud controlled the emergency stores under authority Auberon had granted after the last shortage, when he placed winter provisions beneath one ministry so no village could hoard warmth while another froze. Cecily had warned him that one locked door could become colder than 10 frightened villages. He called the monopoly temporary. 7 winters later, Maud still held every key. Auberon came down the steps, released the tree. The workers lowered the winch. Cecily knelt and pressed 2 fingers to the root's inner bark. Warmth answered. Not enough to burn. Enough to prove life. A thin red pulse traveled beneath the pale wood, then vanished into a broken root no wider than thread. "Where does it go?" Auberon asked. "Where the taken heat is strongest." "Roots do not choose," Maud said. "No, they follow what was removed from the grove." Fire-pear roots did not know theft, ministers, or kings. When cut from their tree, surviving rootlets traveled toward concentrated stores of heat drawn from the same orchard. Growers used the trait to find lost fruit beneath snow or buried seedbeds after landslides. The roots were not witnesses. They were hunger given direction. They could not name a thief, read a seal, or tell a court why fruit had been moved. They could only follow the heat that belonged to the grove. Cecily reached for the last living strand. Auberon caught her wrist. His hand had once closed over hers around the first sapling. Now it had signed the order destroying every tree that had outlived her daughter. "Do not." He released her. "You do not touch the last root after ordering the orchard killed." Auberon's face tightened, but he did not defend himself. "If the root remains active, it may carry disease beneath the palace foundations," Maud said. "Salt injury is not disease. You have no standing to counter a royal inspection. I have buried more winters in this soil than your inspectors have studied. The grove must be burned before nightfall." Cecily rose. No. Every terrace grower heard it. Auberon looked at the living strand. Preserve the root bed until an independent soil test is completed. Your Majesty, delay risks spread. You asked me to destroy the orchard before the soil was tested. I agreed. I will not compound that decision by burning the remaining evidence. He had stopped the second fire. He had not stopped the first order. It was action, not repair. The trees were already down. Mara remained dead beneath a court record that blamed weather. Cecily wrapped the surviving root in warm cloth. I will keep it. It belongs to the crown terraces, Maud said. It belonged to the grove. Let her take it, Auberon said. He could permit her to carry the last living strand, because permission cost less than admitting he had ordered the rest dead. She did not thank him. Above them, inside the locked ministerial provision wing, a marble tile rose by the width of a fingernail. Then another. Beneath the locked ministerial provision floor, pale roots threaded through mortar toward hundreds of sealed fire-pears stacked in winter crates. The crates bore crown winter wax, not a thief's mark. Their sealed skins held a clean summer heat no blighted fruit should have kept. That concentrated warmth drew the severed roots through stone. One red-gold pear pushed into the dark, then a second, and beneath the minister's floor, the stolen summer began to ripen. The roots had not proved why the fruit was hidden. They had only proved the orchard had been emptied before it was condemned. The roots had not accused Maud. They had only followed summer to the locked room. By the time Cecily reached the provision wing, 3 marble tiles had lifted beneath red-veined roots. The first fire-pear had broken through whole. Its skin glowed beneath the winter lamps, unblackened and firm. Provision Minister Maud Varon stood before the locked doors with her silver keys gathered in one hand. This is a lawful emergency reserve, she said. Fruit removed from a suspected grove must be quarantined before distribution. Reserve is a clean word, Cecily answered, when the grower is told her trees died empty. Maud looked toward the roots lifting the marble. They followed concentrated heat. That proves storage, not misconduct. No one said otherwise. Auberon arrived behind the terrace workers and hatchery healers who had followed the roots uphill. Palace guards tried to clear the corridor. Leave them, he said. Maud's gaze sharpened. Provision quarantine is restricted. Opening it publicly risks contamination and panic. You asked me to destroy an orchard on the authority of your inspection, Auberon said. The fruit taken from that orchard will now be inspected under the same light. He ordered the doors opened. The command did not return Cecily's land or raise one tree from the black furrows below. Auberon had opened the floor. He had not restored a single root. The locks released one by one. Warm air crossed the corridor. Hundreds of winter crates filled the chamber. Each lid carried the pale crown wax used for emergency hatchery stores. The wax confirms authorized custody, Maud said. It confirms who sealed the crate, not when the fruit was cut. What would? Auberon asked. Harvest wax. Growers sealed the stem end of every storage crate with orchard wax mixed on the day of cutting. Its color changed as the resin cooled through the season. Ministerial storage uses crown wax after transfer, Maud said. Over the orchard seal. Not instead of it. Auberon ordered the nearest crate brought forward. You will examine the fruit as temporary grower witness. He could borrow her expertise faster than he could return the authority he had stripped from her soil. Temporary. Until the inquiry is complete. Not owner of the terraces. Not yet. Cecily let the limit remain where every grower could hear it. He needed her hands because his officers had destroyed the grove before listening to them. Need was not restoration. Record that I examine under protest. A clerk wrote it. Cecily cut through the crown wax. Beneath it, a thinner seal circled the crate's stem slot. Deep amber. Early frost month. The orchard had not been declared diseased until 12 days later. Quarantine harvest may begin before a formal declaration when inspectors observe preliminary symptoms, Maud said. Then there should be a grower notice. Emergency removal does not always permit one. Who cut the fruit? Licensed provision crews. Before I was told the grove was sick. To prevent loss. Cecily lifted the lid. Heat rolled over her face. The pears lay in ash wool, each one red gold and unmarked. She selected 3 from different layers. Fruit harvested from rot dyes at the stem. These stems were cut clean. A blighted pear separated as tissue softened. Its stem blackened inward and left a ragged hollow. These stems were flat. Knife cut. The flesh around them remained bright. Disease can develop in the roots after healthy fruit is removed, Maud said. Then the fruit was removed before disease reached the trees. That is the purpose of quarantine. And the grower was told there was nothing left to save. Auberon looked at the stacked crates. How many came from the Rowan orchard? The chamber register listed only terrace sectors. Cecily examined the wood. Growers marked their crates with pruning cuts so the right boards returned after winter. A double crescent appeared beneath the crown wax. Hemok. It repeated across 6 rows. The room held nearly her entire harvest. Authorized emergency collection is not theft, Maud said. No, but a hidden harvest cannot prove a natural failure. Auberon ordered every crate preserved under joined witness. Then he returned to the ruined terraces. Snow settled between the exposed root beds. Cecily led the independent soil master to the pale bands beneath the final tree. Cut across the slope, not along the irrigation line. If the grove carries active rot, disturbing the beds may spread it, Maud said. Salt does not spread like rot. The trench opened beneath 3 destroyed trees. White granules appeared in a narrow channel, then another. Each ran straight beside the irrigation cuts, 6 inches below the surface. The mineral wind had not placed them there. Wind scattered. Hands laid lines. Salt did not fall into straight lines, Cecily said. Someone taught it where to burn. Salt treatment is used to arrest ember mold before it enters adjoining terraces, Maud said. Not on fire-pears. Their feeder roots draw surface minerals inward. The inspectors may have judged the risk greater than the crop loss. Without notifying the grower, emergency authority permits treatment before consultation. Show the treatment order. A provision clerk brought the terrace file. It contained an anti-rot authorization bearing Maud's office seal. No soil test. No grower notice. No record of ember mold. You approved salting, Auberon said. I approved emergency treatment after inspectors reported white root spread. The white roots were caused by salt, Cecily said. That is your conclusion. It is orchard anatomy. The soil master confirmed that the burn began where salt touched the feeder channels, not where mold entered the bark. The authorization did not prove why Maud ordered it. It proved her office treated an untested grove and later called the resulting damage disease. Workers followed the channels to a shed near the irrigation gate. Inside stood 12 empty salt sacks. Anti-rot stores are drawn from any available winter stock, Maud said. Cecily lifted one sack. Its faded red seal showed a hatchling curled beneath 3 warming flames. The mark belonged to emergency hatchery salt, used to preserve fire-pear broth during severe shortages. Below it remained a winter date. Old sacks could be reused. Old seals could outlive the stores they once named. That would be Maud's argument. The same winter Mara Rowan died. The sack did not prove who had let her freeze. It only proved the court had named an empty store, while something marked for warmth still survived. The court had said no emergency stores remained that year. Yet salt assigned to keep hatchery fruit usable had been carried to Cecily's orchard and laid beneath the roots. The sack had not named Maud. It had named the winter that had taken Mara. Provision Minister Maud Varon stood beside the orchard shed while snow gathered on the faded hatchery seal. Old sacks are reused, she said. A container may outlive the stock it once carried. Then the batch mark will tell us whether this one did, Cecily answered. The mark sat beneath the curled hatchling, 3 shallow cuts around a red wax circle. Emergency salt batch 9. Auberon looked toward the provision clerk. Preserve every sack. Open the hatchery salt allocation ledger from that winter. Maud's keys moved softly at her waist. The old shortage archive is sealed for contamination review. Those records contain private claims, failed hatchings, and village debt. So did the decisions made from them, Cecily said. Auberon ordered the archive opened. The command preserved evidence. It did not change that the archive existed because he had placed every winter store beneath one ministry. Auberon had opened the orchard inquiry. He had not yet opened the winter that made Cecily a mother of the dead. They returned to the provision wing, where the recovered fire-pears glowed behind joined seals. The old shortage archive lay beyond an iron door. Maud alone had been permitted to open for 7 years. Auberon held out his hand. The key. Maud gave it to him. Central provision prevented village hoarding, she said. Your decree required all emergency stocks to pass through one reserve. My decree gave your office custody and prevented stronger districts from keeping warmth while rural hatcheries froze. Cecily looked at the locked door. It also made one missing ration disappear behind one set of keys. Auberon opened the archive himself. Dust and dried ash lifted from winter ledgers. The clerk found the allocation volume for Mara's final year. Emergency hatchery salt entered at first frost. Batch 9, 40 sacks. 30 distributed to northern brothhouses. The balance should have shown 10. Instead, it read depleted. Where did the final 10 go? Cecily asked. Emergency ledgers often marked stock depleted when it left direct hatchery use, Maud said. Transferred where? A central reserve, preservation kitchen, or district under greater need. Then the route should exist. The transfer column contained one notation: broth preservation reserve. No destination, no carrier seal, no receiving hatchery. A store marked depleted should not return years later beneath living roots, Cecily said. These sacks may have been emptied and later filled with orchard salt. Stock rotation reuses sound containers. The soil master compared residue in the seams with salt from the burned feeder channels. Same coarse crystal. Same red ash. Reused sacks filled from later anti-rot stock would produce that result, Maud said. The explanation held. The sacks connected the orchard treatment to old containers, not yet to withheld emergency salt. Cecily pointed to wax inside the folded rim. Batch wax does not survive washing. The inner seam still carried red winter wax from batch 9. New salt had entered sacks, never fully opened or cleaned. Or the bags were stored after partial use, Maud said. Then they were not depleted. The clerk brought the route book governing the broth preservation reserve created under Auberon's monopoly order. Its first page bore his dragon seal. All unassigned warming stores transferred to Crown Provision for redistribution by emergency priority. Cecily read the line. You gave one office the right to take whatever remained after local allocation. I believe centralized stores would prevent loss, Auberon said. You believe distance made fairness. No, I believed control would. Control had sounded like mercy when he signed it. In Cecily's mouth, it sounded like a door locked from the warm side. The entry showed batch 9 received by Crown Provision 2 days after the hatchery ledger marked it depleted. The entry did not prove malice. It proved the word depleted had been used before the warmth was gone. 10 sacks. Exactly the missing balance. Received for broth preservation, Maud said. Lawful under the monopoly decree. Where was it sent? Auberon asked. The next line recorded reserve inspection. The destination below it was blank. The stock may have remained unused, Maud said. While hatcheries were told none remained? Cecily asked. Unused salt cannot warm a dragon without fruit, fuel, and healers. It preserves broth long enough to carry heat. If there was broth to preserve, Cecily looked toward the sealed Rowan pears. The court had named fruit failure. The ledger named salt without a destination. Open the ration requests. Household requests are not evidence of misconduct, Maud said. Severe winters produce more need than any crown can meet. My daughter supervised the East Hollow hatchery. The clerk brought the request bundle. Mara Rowan's handwriting appeared on 3 pages. Cecily knew the tilt of every letter. She had taught that hand to write seed counts before Mara was tall enough to reach the drying shelves. First request: fire-pear broth failing after 2 days without preservation salt. Second request: 7 hatchlings showing cold lung collapse. Third request: immediate release of 1 salt sack and 12 warming pears from Central Reserve. A red refusal mark crossed the final page. Reserve unavailable. Cecily did not touch it. She had heard Mara cough that night and believed the court's message that every store was empty. Who refused it? Auberon asked. The authorization field carried no name. Only Crown Provision emergency rule. Requests were ranked by projected hatchling survival, Maud said. East Hollow may have fallen below the transport threshold. Transport threshold? Whether the road cost more heat than the delivery could preserve. The road was 4 miles. Under ice wind. Mara walked it herself to submit this. The clerk found the reserve cancellation register. Batch 9 had been scheduled for East Hollow. Then the route was canceled. Reason: Central Reserve retention. Authority: Dragon Monopoly Directive. Auberon's seal stood beside the rule. Below it was the date. the same day as Mara Rowan's final ration request. The line did not prove Auberon had read her name. It proved the system he created had cancelled warmth under his authority while Maud's office still held the missing salt. The cancellation had not named a murderer. It had named a rule cold enough to do murder's work. Maud Varen placed Mara's final ration request beside the reserve cancellation line. Transport thresholds were created to save the greatest number of hatchlings with limited warmth, she said. One denied route does not prove the formula was false. Then show the formula, Cecily answered. The old shortage archive contained a separate volume bound in pale dragonhide. Its title named No Village and No Dead. Winter Survival Ranking. Auberon ordered it opened before the growers, hatchery healers, and provision clerks already gathered in the reserve chamber. Maud's voice remained measured. The calculations include private medical estimates. Public reading may expose families who lost hatchlings. Those families were already exposed to the cold, Cecily said. Only the decision stayed protected. Auberon looked toward the clerk. Read East Hollow. The page assigned survival value through 4 inputs. Number of living hatchlings. Available local warmth. Transport heat loss. Expected recovery after delivery. East Hollow had 14 hatchlings under care. The local warmth column read none. The preservation salt column read unavailable. The fire-pear reserve column read exhausted. The expected recovery value had therefore been reduced below the minimum route threshold. East Hollow did not fall below the formula, Cecily said. The formula was fed a lie. An inaccurate estimate is not necessarily a lie, Maud replied. Inputs changed hourly during that winter. Batch 9 was already in Crown provision, not necessarily available for transport. The Rowan orchard still held fruit. Your crop report recorded winter failure. Who supplied that report? The clerk turned to the source codes. Local fruit status had been entered from Crown Provision inspection. Salt availability came from Crown Provision Reserve. Transport heat loss came from Crown Provision Road assessment. Every input capable of lowering East Hollow's rank had entered through the same office. Auberon read the page twice. My directive allowed one ministry to collect the data, hold the stores, and judge the requests. It allowed rapid decisions, Maud said. Dividing those duties during a freeze would have cost time. It also allowed the office keeping the warmth to describe it as unavailable. That is an implication, not proof. Cecily pointed to the road loss estimate. How much heat would 4 miles have cost? The ranking sheet assigned a loss of 60%. A hatchery healer shook her head. Not with ash wool wrapping. 25, perhaps 30 under ice wind. Were the roads open? Maud asked. The eastern bridge was closed, the clerk said. Mara used the orchard track, Cecily replied. That route was not approved for royal transport. She walked it, carrying the request. A person on foot is not a provision cart. No. A mother's daughter reached the palace by a road your formula said warmth could not cross. Auberon ordered the road assessment opened. The approved route measured 11 miles around the frozen bridge. The orchard track measured 4. The formula had calculated heat loss using the longer road. Why was the shorter route excluded? He asked. Uncertified slopes, Maud said. A cart lost there would waste the entire ration. Did anyone inspect it? No inspection could be spared. Then danger was assumed. Under emergency law, uncertainty is counted as loss. Threshold is a clean word, Cecily said, when the child below it is not yours. Silence held the room. She did not weep. She turned the page. The first ranking, made after Mara's second request, placed East Hollow just above the delivery line. A revision had been entered after the third. Local pairs changed from limited to none. Batch 9 changed from reserved to unavailable. Transport loss rose from 30% to 60%. Expected survival fell beneath the threshold. Who revised this? Auberon asked. The page carried Maud's office seal, not her personal signature. Emergency revisions were entered by ranking clerks under ministerial authority, Maud said. My seal certified the office, not every figure. Who supplied the figures? The attached source slip named 3 reports. A provision crop summary. A reserve availability notice. A route risk adjustment. All issued under the monopoly directive. All accepted without local grower or hatchery witness. Cecily looked at Mara's handwriting beside the revised sheet. Her daughter had written that 7 hatchlings were still breathing strongly enough to recover if broth arrived before dawn. The ranking revision reduced expected survival to 3. Why? Cecily asked. Maud examined the notation. Cold lung collapse accelerates quickly. A later estimate may have reflected that. Whose estimate? No healer's name appeared. No East Hollow seal. Only projected decline under delayed delivery. They lowered the number because the delivery had already been delayed, Cecily said. Then used the lower number to justify delaying it again. Maud's expression remained composed. Emergency systems must account for changing conditions. A condition created by the system is not a neutral input. Auberon ordered Mara's requests, the original ranking, the revision, and every source report preserved under joined witness. He suspended the transport threshold for all hatchery warmth until local growers and healers could verify the inputs. Maud's keys struck softly against one another. Without a threshold, every village will claim first need. Then need will be witnessed by more than the office holding the stores. He expanded Cecily's temporary authority to include survival rankings and orchard source verification. Still temporary. Still no land returned. A king who opens a ledger has not yet opened a grave. Cecily met his eyes. Do not comfort me with the hand that locked warmth away. I was not going to touch you. You once held a sapling with me. Now every time you reach, I see the hand that signed the orchard dead. He accepted the distance. The clerk found the activation line beneath the revision. Ranking recalculated under Dragon Monopoly Directive, Emergency Clause 7. Auberon's seal had not entered Mara's name. It had authorized the rule that allowed Maud's office to replace local truth with centralized estimates. Below the clause stood the revision time, 1 hour after Mara's 3rd request, and beside it, in smaller writing, the reason for recalculation. Central reserve must be retained for royal priority hatchlings. East Hollow had not been denied because no warmth existed. It had been lowered beneath the threshold so the warmth could remain behind the palace door. Before sunrise, Auberon ordered the East Hollow ranking recalculated in the same corridor where Mara's request had once been denied. No crown clerk was permitted to enter a number alone. Cecily stood at the long provision table beside an East Hollow healer, a roadmaster, and the soil keeper from the ruined terraces. Maud Varon remained at the opposite end, with her silver keys and the calm of a woman who still believed procedure could outlast outrage. Use the conditions recorded before the 3rd request, Auberon said. Maud inclined her head. Then the court must use only information available at that hour, not evidence discovered years later. Agreed, Cecily said. But available does not mean whatever your office chose to acknowledge. The first input was living hatchlings. Mara had reported 14. The revised sheet had projected only 3 likely to survive. The East Hollow healer opened the illness record. 7 showed early cold lung collapse. 4 remained stable. 3 had weakened but still accepted warm broth. With preserved broth before dawn, she said, 10 had a strong chance. Possibly 12. Maud touched the edge of the record. That estimate was not before the ranking clerk. It was in Mara's 2nd request, Cecily said. The clerk compared the pages. The wording matched. Expected recovery. 10 minimum with immediate warming ration. The ranking sheet had reduced it to 3 without a healer's counterseal. Auberon's face did not change, but he ordered the lower figure struck from the recalculation. The next input was local fruit. Crown provision had entered none. Cecily placed the harvest wax copy beside the ranking sheet. The Rowan orchard was cut 12 days before the disease declaration. Those pears existed when Mara asked. They were under quarantine, Maud said. Quarantine is not disappearance. Fruit not released for use is legally unavailable. Then your formula measured obedience to custody, not warmth. Maud's gaze cooled. Unverified fruit could poison every hatchling it reached. Yet your office stored it as emergency reserve. No blight had been confirmed at the time of cutting. Then the fruit was healthy when East Hollow needed it. Auberon ordered the input changed from none to held in central reserve. The 3rd input was batch 9 salt. 10 sacks had reached crown provision before the final request. Maud argued that reserve retention made them unavailable for local allocation. The hatchery healer answered before Cecily could. Salt in a locked room still preserves broth. The lock does not alter its use. The recalculation entered 10 sacks available under crown custody. Finally came transport loss. The approved road measured 11 miles. Mara's orchard track measured 4. The roadmaster had now found winter maintenance cuts from that year along the shorter path, proof that provision sleds had used it earlier in the same month. Maud studied the cuts. A route used once is not automatically safe during an ice wind. No, Cecily said, but it is not automatically lost either. The roadmaster assigned 30% heat loss with ash wool wrapping. The final ranking was read aloud. East Hollow did not fall beneath the threshold. It rose above 9 other routes. With Mara's reported recovery estimate, the healthy Rowan Pears, batch 9 salt, and the shorter road, East Hollow qualified for delivery before midnight. No one spoke for several breaths. Cecily looked at her daughter's name. Mara had not died because winter produced no warmth. She had died after the system renamed existing warmth unavailable. Hands. This reconstruction assumes every disputed input would have been accepted. At the time, Crown Provision held inspection reports stating no safe pears, no releasable salt, and no certified route. Reports from your office, Cecily said. Reports authorized under emergency law. False inputs do not become true because the law receives them quickly. Maud turned to Auberon. If you dismantle ranking authority whenever grief finds an error, the next severe winter will become a contest of voices. The villages closest to the throne will shout loudest. The smallest hatcheries will vanish beneath them. Cecily did not raise her voice. Grief did not teach me where salt burns, soil did. Mara's handwriting did not alter the wax dates. Her grave did not shorten the road. Auberon looked at the gathered clerks. Effective now, Crown Provision may not assign hatchery survival rank without a local healer's seal, a grower's verification of available warmth, and an independent route measure. Maud's keys went still. You are suspending the mechanism that governs all winter release. I am suspending your office's power to create the inputs and judge them alone. You will slow every delivery. Then the Crown will answer for the delay in public. It was not a plea for forgiveness. It was the surrender of a power he had once mistaken for efficiency. He ordered the corrected East Hollow ranking entered beside the original, not hidden behind it. Mara's request would remain attached to both. Cecily watched his dragon seal press into the suspension order. The same seal had once kept warmth behind the palace door. Now it limited the hand that used it. That did not make the old winter less cold. Auberon turned to her. Your witness authority will extend to every current orchard classification touched by Crown Provision. Temporary again? Until permanent custody law is written. By whom? Not by the Crown alone. She accepted the authority, not the comfort beneath it. Maud spoke before the clerk could close the ranking volume. The Rowan Grove is a separate matter. Current soil damage cannot be decided by an old shortage. The same office defined available fruit in both, Cecily said. The same office removed the harvest, controlled the inspection, and called the local supply empty. You are joining unlike events because they share your loss. No, I am asking whether the current classification was built from the same kind of inputs. She faced Auberon. Open the Crown Ash Terrace's classification file. Maud's expression changed by almost nothing. That record remains active under disease containment. Public access could compromise adjoining growers. Then open it under joined witness, Cecily said. Auberon ordered the file brought to the provision corridor. It arrived bound in black orchard cloth. The first page listed the Rowan Grove as exhausted. The second listed viable fruit, none. The third recorded grower cooperation, refused. Cecily had never been asked to sign any inspection. The classification date stood at the bottom. 6 days before the first tree showed salt burn, the orchard had been declared empty, uncooperative, and beyond recovery before the damage used to condemn it had even appeared. The classification had condemned the grove before the salt had begun to burn. Cecily laid the black orchard file beside the recovered harvest seals. Exhausted fruit stock, uncooperative grower, active root disease. 3 conclusions. None had been witnessed by the woman whose hands had kept the Crown Ash Terraces alive for 31 winters. Maud Varon stood at the provision table while the gathered growers pressed closer. Emergency classifications are often provisional, she said. They allow the ministry to act before visible collapse spreads. A provisional record should be corrected when the facts arrive, Cecily answered. The facts were still developing. The classification says my cooperation was refused 6 days before anyone asked for it. Maud looked toward the clerk. A failed contact may have been entered as refusal. No messenger came to my house. Then the delivery record must be checked. Auberon ordered the source slips opened. The fruit stock entry came from Crown Provision Removal Crews. The grower cooperation entry came from Crown Provision Inspection. The disease entry came from Crown Provision Soil Assessment. As with East Hollow, one office had supplied every fact that later justified its own authority. Who witnessed the orchard before classification? Auberon asked. No village grower. No independent soil keeper. No hatchery healer. Only 2 provision inspectors whose names appeared beneath Maud's office seal. The seal certifies the ministry, Maud said. It does not mean I stood beneath every tree. No, Cecily replied. It means the same office that took the fruit was permitted to report that no fruit remained. The first removal slip described preventive harvest. The classification translated that harvest into natural exhaustion. The second slip claimed Cecily had obstructed inspection because the eastern gate remained locked at dawn. Cecily turned the page. The eastern gate has been sealed since the retaining wall cracked 9 years ago. Every provision crew enters through the south path. 2-4, 2-4, 2-4, 2-4. The inspectors may not have known. They classified refusal from a gate no grower uses. Maud's expression remained calm. Error is not conspiracy. No, Cecily said. But repeated error always leaning toward one locked store deserves a better name than misfortune. Auberon ordered the cooperation findings suspended. He did not restore Cecily's ownership. He gave the record back its uncertainty after his order had already given the land to axes. The soil assessment came next. White roots spread, observed. Immediate salting advised. No samples were attached. No mold scoring. No bark cuttings. The soil keeper compared the date with the anti-rot authorization. The assessment was entered before the channels were salted, he said. Maud nodded, which is why treatment followed. But the inspectors described white roots before salt touched them, Cecily said. Early mineral whitening may have been visible. Then where are the samples? Emergency field work does not always preserve them. Cecily opened the orchard maintenance book she had carried from her cottage. Every row had been recorded in her own hand. Pruning dates, ash depth, heat yield, feeder root color. 2 days before the ministry's assessment, the roots were copper red and flexible. 3 days after the salting order, they began whitening in straight bands. Grief did not teach me where salt burns, she said. Soil did. Auberon looked at the soil keeper. Could natural disease have produced the pattern? Not in channels matching the treatment cuts. Maud answered before he could continue. Then the inspectors may have mistaken early salt exposure from another source for disease. That still does not establish intent. It was a narrower defense. It remained a defense. Auberon ordered every current disease classification issued solely through Crown Provision suspended pending joint review. The growers murmured, but Cecily did not mistake suspension for restoration. He was stopping the mechanism after it had already killed her trees. Show the classification trigger, she said. The clerk produced the emergency orchard code. Once a grove was marked exhausted, uncooperative, and root dangerous, the ministry could remove fruit, salt feeder channels, seize land for winter use, and exclude the grower from appeal until containment ended. The same words had shaped Mara's winter. Unavailable, depleted, below threshold. Now they had been given to soil. Exhausted, uncooperative, diseased. The system did not need to call a person worthless. It only needed to make every form describing her work say there was nothing worth saving. Auberon read the seizure clause. My monopoly order activated this authority. It centralized winter land and stores under one command, Maud said. Without it, adjoining groves might have protected private harvests while royal hatcheries failed. Royal hatcheries, Cecily repeated. Maud's eyes moved to her. The crown carries responsibility for the bloodlines that defend the realm. And rural hatchlings carry? Whose responsibility? The same crown's, according to available means. Available means, Cecily said, has become whatever remains after the palace closes its doors. Auberon ordered the land disposition records brought forward. Maud did not object immediately. That was the first thing Cecily noticed. The clerk returned with a narrow planning file tied in silver cord. The cover named no disease. Crown Ash Terrace's winter consolidation. Inside, the Rowan Grove had already been divided into new sectors. Village plots removed. Independent growers reduced to seasonal labor. All viable future fruit assigned first to royal hatcheries, palace dragons, and military breeding vaults. Only surplus would pass to rural districts. The plan was not final law. It carried Maud's office review, not her personal signature. Its authority line cited Auberon's Dragon Winter Consolidation Order. He had signed that order 3 years after Mara's death, believing centralized land would protect the kingdom from another shortage. Cecily turned to the schedule. Survey completed. Grower displacement estimates approved. Root removal crews reserved. The date stood above the disease declaration. Not days before. 19 days. The ministry had planned the orchard's future before its inspectors named the orchard sick. Auberon stared at the page bearing his own order. What condition allowed conversion? The clerk read the line. Failure of local production under emergency classification. Cecily placed one hand on the file. The orchard did not fail and then become useful to the crown. She looked toward the black terraces below, where uprooted trees lay beneath snow. It had to be named failed before the crown could take what came after it. At the bottom of the final page waited the proposed new title for her daughter's grove. Royal First Fire Hatchery Orchard. The land that had warmed village dragons for generations had been condemned to become a walled garden whose fruit would reach the palace first. Auberon suspended the Royal First Fire plan before the snow could cover the survey stakes. The order stopped new crews from entering the Crown Ash terraces. It froze the land conversion file, sealed the remaining Rowan fruit under joint custody, and prohibited Crown provision from assigning a single crate without grower and hatchery witnesses. It did not raise the uprooted trees. Cecily stood beside the provision table while Maud Varon read the suspension. "You are placing village claims above the hatcheries that defend the kingdom," Maud said. "I am removing an order that placed the palace above every village before need was measured. Royal dragons are not ornaments. They keep the northern walls, carry warning fire, and protect the grain roads." "So do the dragons raised in rural hatcheries," Cecily said. "They simply protect people whose names do not appear in palace stone." Maud turned one of her silver keys between her fingers. "The recovered pears cannot be distributed until quarantine ends. The stems are clean. The fruit has held stable heat through storage. Your examination is not a full feeding trial. Then test 3 pears before witnesses." Auberon ordered a royal hatchery healer and 2 rural healers to perform the trial in the provision chamber. 3 pears were opened. Their flesh remained red gold. No black veins marked the cores. The warmth released evenly into 3 covered bowls of broth. All 3 healers certified them safe. Cecily placed her hand beside the 6 rows of Rowan crates. "These go first to the hatcheries that were denied winter allotments." Maud's expression hardened by a degree. "The Crown retains first claim under emergency priority." "The Crown has already taken first claim," Cecily said. "It took the fruit before declaring the grove diseased." A deep sound moved through the palace floor. "No thunder." A dragon's breath breaking badly in its chest. The lamps trembled. Maud looked toward Auberon. "Your Majesty." He did not answer. The sound came again from the royal eyrie below the western tower, a rasping exhale without enough fire behind it. Cecily watched Auberon's face. The king, who had stood unmoved above uprooted trees, now held his shoulders too still. Maud spoke carefully. "The royal dragon has required concentrated fire-pear rations for 4 winters. Without them, its inner flame may fail before deep frost." The corridor went quiet. Auberon had concealed the weakness because a king whose dragon could no longer carry royal fire invited border challenge, court revolt, and every ambitious house to test the throne. Maud had kept the dragon warm with private reserve fruit. Fruit recorded nowhere the villages could see. Cecily looked toward the sealed crates. "How many?" Auberon answered himself. 2 pears each week through winter. "From which orchards?" "Crown provision assigned them." "That was not my question." His silence gave her the answer. He had never asked which growers lost the fruit that kept his dragon alive. Maud stepped between the silence and its consequence. "The royal dragon protects every hatchery in near. Preserving its flame is not private indulgence." "No," Cecily said, "but hiding the cost makes sacrifice look voluntary. If its fire dies, rural dragons lose the shield above them. Then the need should have been entered honestly and weighed beside theirs. Public knowledge would have endangered the crown. Secrecy endangered everyone beneath it. Auberon removed the royal priority token from the allocation board. My dragon receives no hidden ration from these crates. Maud's gaze sharpened. You would risk the royal bond to make a moral display? I will not keep it alive by repeating the system that let East Hollow freeze. Cecily did not mistake the decision for absolution. He had chosen transparency only after concealed warmth had been uncovered beneath his own palace. Still, the order cost him something real. That mattered. It did not settle what he owed. Auberon turned to the healers. The royal dragon's condition will be entered publicly. Its ration will be judged with every other hatchery need. Maud lowered her voice. Enemies will learn the crown is vulnerable. They will learn the crown no longer hides its survival inside false scarcity. He gave Cecily temporary authority over distribution of the recovered Rowan harvest. Temporary again, yet broader than before. She could assign the fruit before the palace took a single crate. Cecily selected East Hollow first. Then the two mountain hatcheries whose winter requests had been reduced beneath the same survival threshold. Each crate received 3 seals: grower, healer, and crown transport. The palace received none. Not yet. Your dragon may be entered after the rural cold lung lists are verified, Cecily told Auberon. He accepted the ruling without rank. Maud did not. Delaying its ration may damage the royal flame permanently. Then you understand what delay meant when Mara wrote 3 times. Cecily opened the lowest Rowan crate to divide its fruit. Beneath the ash wool, her fingers touched a strip of hardened clay. It was not part of the crate. She lifted out a narrow grafting tube sealed at both ends with dark broth wax. A small knot had been pressed into the wax. 2 loops crossed by a short stem. Mara's seed mark. Cecily had not seen it since the winter her daughter died. A fire-pear rootstock could remain dormant for years, if wrapped in cold ash and sealed away from concentrated heat. Growers preserved rare grafts that way through drought, war, and frozen ground. Her hands did not shake as she broke the outer wax. Inside lay a slender root, dark at the bark but copper-red beneath the first careful scrape. Alive, a folded strip of hatchery cloth surrounded it. Mara's handwriting covered one side. Last clean rootstock from the crown ash line, recovered after the reserve was called empty. Keep it from crown provision until the growers can witness where the warmth went. Cecily read the words once. Then again. Mara had known the reserve was not empty before she died. She had saved the last clean rootstock before the court could seize or destroy it, and she had hidden it inside the very harvest her mother had just reclaimed from beneath the minister's floor. Cecily did not allow the palace clerk to touch Mara's rootstock. She laid it on clean ash cloth and called for 2 growers, a hatchery healer, and the soil keeper before breaking the inner seal. Maud Varon watched from across the provision table. A private note hidden inside a fruit crate is not an official record. No, Cecily said. But bark, wax, and cloth can still tell us when it was placed there. The rootstock was no longer than Cecily's forearm. One end carried a narrow graft ring cut in the old crown ash pattern. Auberon recognized it. That came from the tree we planted. Cecily looked at him. The first sapling had been set into the terraces 3 days after Mara's birth. Auberon had steadied its trunk while Cecily packed warm ash around the roots. Years later, Mara learned grafting beneath its branches. This is the last clean root from that tree, Cecily said. Auberon reached toward the ash cloth, then stopped before his fingers crossed its edge. He had learned that restraint did not undo the hand that signed an orchard dead. The soil keeper scraped a thread of outer bark. Beneath it, the living copper layer showed one deep dormancy ring. It was sealed during the shortage winter, he said, before the root entered its second freeze. The broth wax around the tube carried East Hollow's hatchery mixture. Red ash, pear resin, and a trace of preserving salt. Mara had sealed it where she worked. The cloth wrapped around it bore a faded reserve transfer stamp. Batch 9. Maud's gaze remained steady. That proves the tube passed through hatchery stores. It does not prove Mara entered the Crown Provision Reserve. It proves she preserved this after Batch 9 reached East Hollow records, Cecily answered. Her note says the reserve had already been called empty. Her belief is not an inventory. No. So we follow what she asked to be witnessed. A small notation appeared on the reverse of Mara's message. Discrepancy notice, third frost, provision review. Auberon ordered her hatchery service file opened. The clerk returned with a narrow bundle tied in gray cord. Mara's first report described the Central Reserve doors remaining warm 2 nights after the court announced that no fire-pears or preservation salt remained. Her second recorded 5 provision carts entering the Western storehouse. None appeared on the outward hatchery route list. Her third requested an independent grower count of all surviving fruit. Maud read the reports without changing expression. Warm doors may indicate heating furnaces. Incoming carts may carry empty crates, fuel, or spoiled stock. Mara recorded observations, not verified contents. She asked for verification, Cecily said, and emergency staff may have lacked time to provide it. The response attached to Mara's request contained a single finding: witness conflict. Because Mara was the daughter of Cecily Rowan, whose orchard supplied crown fruit, she was declared financially connected to the disputed reserve. Her hatchery witness standing was suspended. The suspension had been entered the morning after her third ration request. A conflict rule prevents suppliers from inflating claims through relatives, Maud said. It protects the reserve from coordinated pressure. Mara asked whether fruit existed, Cecily replied. She did not ask to set its price. She asked for her mother's profession to enter a sealed royal store. She asked for someone outside your office to count. Auberon took the suspension page. What authority allowed Crown Provision to remove a hatchery witness without a healer's review? The clerk read the citation. Dragon Monopoly Directive. Emergency Conflict Clause. Another door built under Auberon's seal. His policy had allowed the office holding the stores to disqualify the person questioning whether those stores were empty. Who reviewed Mara's notice after her standing was removed? He asked. No secondary review appears, the clerk said. Maud answered calmly. Once a witness is suspended for conflict, unsupported observations do not compel inspection. Unsupported because your office removed the support, Cecily said. The rule applied to every connected claimant. A rule can apply equally and still protect the wrong thing. Auberon ordered the conflict clause suspended. From that hour, no local grower, healer, or hatchery witness could be removed by the same office whose inventory they challenged. He also ordered Mara's 3 discrepancy notices entered beside her ration request and the corrected survival ranking. It was the first time her words had been restored to the record. It did not restore the breath she had lost. The clerk found one final attachment beneath the service bundle: a winter price notice. During the week Mara reported warm reserve doors, Crown Provision had raised emergency fire-pear prices to 3 times the ordinary harvest rate. Villages could no longer obtain fruit directly from growers. Under Auberon's monopoly order, they had to purchase through the Crown Reserve. Maud placed her hand beside the notice. Emergency prices rise when supply contracts and transport risk increases. Unless supply is already behind the locked door, Cecily said, that has not been proved. No, but the price rose while the inventory was protected from independent count. Auberon ordered every emergency price schedule from Mara's winter, and the current Rowan harvest sealed under joined custody. Maud's voice cooled. You are treating crisis pricing as evidence of concealment. I am treating concealed inventory and rising prices as facts that should never have been judged by one office. The current schedules were brought first. The Rowan pears stored beneath the ministerial floor had been assigned an emergency release price nearly 4 times what Cecily would have received as grower. The Crown would buy the orchard's fruit at condemned crop value. Rural hatcheries would purchase it back at emergency value. Maud did not deny the schedule. Inspection, quarantine, storage, and guarded transport create costs. The ministry took healthy fruit, Cecily said, named the trees diseased, and charged the villages for the distance between the orchard and your lock. The price notice did not yet prove Maud had created the shortage. It proved her office profited in authority whenever local warmth was reclassified as royal scarcity. Auberon turned to the approval dates. The first emergency price increase for Rowan fire-pears had been authorized before the roots were salted, before the harvest was removed. Before Cecily was told the orchard was diseased, the Crown had prepared to sell scarcity before the orchard had been permitted to fail. The price schedule had been written before the shortage it claimed to answer. Maud Varon placed both hands on the provision table. Winter prices are prepared from forecasts, not from completed loss. A responsible ministry does not wait for empty shelves before calculating scarcity. Then show what your forecast believed would be lost, Cecily said. The pricing file contained 3 inputs: Expected orchard failure. Restricted reserve volume. Increased transport cost. Each had been supplied by Crown Provision. The expected failure assumed the entire Rowan harvest would become unusable. The reserve volume excluded every crate already taken into ministerial custody. The transport estimate used the 11-mile Royal Road while ignoring the 4-mile orchard track. Auberon read the calculation in silence. The same office removed the fruit, called it unavailable, and raised the price because supply appeared low. Custodied fruit cannot be priced as public stock until quarantine ends, Maud said. Yet the ministry had already assigned its release price. Contingency pricing. For fruit you claimed might be diseased. If cleared, it would enter an emergency market. Cecily touched the line, showing condemned crop compensation. The ministry intended to pay her less than 1/5 of the ordinary harvest value. The rural hatcheries would then buy the same fruit at nearly 4 times that value. The difference funded inspection, guards, storage, and royal transport. It also funded the ministry controlling all 4. You turned the distance between my trees and your locked floor into profit, Cecily said. Administrative cost is not profit. Who received the surplus? The clerk followed the distribution columns. Part went to Crown Transport, part to Provision Inspection, part to Winter Reserve Expansion. A final portion entered the Royal Flame Preservation account. Auberon's expression hardened. That account feeds my dragon. Maud did not look away. It supports the Royal Aerie, emergency medicines, and concentrated warming rations. The dragon protects the kingdom, through a price imposed on the villages whose fruit kept it alive. The crown cannot defend rural hatcheries without a functioning royal bond. Cecily looked toward Auberon. Your dragon's weakness did not create this system. No, he said. My fear of exposing it allowed the system to remain unquestioned. He ordered the Royal Flame Preservation account opened under public witness. The records showed that emergency fruit price surcharges had funded the Royal Dragon for 4 winters. Auberon had known the account existed. He had never asked which shortages created its money. The difference mattered. It did not absolve him. Maud turned to the gathered growers. If the Royal Dragon had failed, border raiders would have reached these terraces before spring. Every choice in winter transfers harm somewhere. Then the harm must be named before someone else is forced to carry it, Cecily said. The clerk found 2 earlier pricing forecasts from neighboring public orchards. Both followed the same sequence. Preventive harvest by Crown Provision. Restricted access to the stored fruit. Emergency classification. Salt treatment. Declared crop failure. Price increase. One orchard had recovered after local growers removed the salted soil. The other had been converted into a military hatchery garden. Neither record proved Maud personally laid salt beneath a root. Together, they proved her ministry repeatedly gained control and pricing authority after damage authorized through its own classifications. Those orchards face documented disease risk, Maud said. Documented by your inspectors, Cecily replied. Under emergency law, without independent soil witness, because the law did not require one. Auberon closed the file. Then the law protected the office from the people who knew the soil. Maud's voice cooled. It protected speed. You asked Crown Provision to prevent another catastrophic shortage. I built a system capable of acting before villages argued themselves into famine. And when the facts resisted the system, I relied on authorized reports. You removed the witnesses who challenged them. I applied conflict rules signed beneath your seal. Auberon accepted the blow without turning it aside. Yes, the word carried through the provision hall. He removed the dragon signet from his hand and pressed it into the wax of a new order. The dragon monopoly directive was revoked, not suspended. Revoked. Crown Provision could no longer seize harvests, classify orchard disease, set emergency prices, and judge distribution through one office. Until permanent law was established, every winter store would require 3 keys, one held by growers, one by hatchery healers, one by the Crown. Maud's silver keys were taken into joint custody. Auberon did not accuse her of killing Mara. He removed her from provision authority pending public judgment for concealed inventory, unsupported disease classifications, unlawful witness suspension, and emergency pricing built from inputs controlled by her own office. Maud remained upright. You may divide the keys, she said. You will also divide responsibility. When the next hatchery freezes while 3 witnesses debate, the villages will remember that certainty once existed. No, Cecily said. They will remember certainty was purchased by deciding whose children could be left beneath it. The recovered Rowan crates were carried into the terrace courtyard. Cecily read every destination aloud. East Hollow, Stonevale, the Northern Ridge Hatchery. The 2 village area houses denied rations under revised survival rankings. Not one crate entered the palace. Auberon's dragon would receive fruit only after its need was recorded beside every rural hatchling and approved through the same witnessed process. The first wagons departed before dusk. Growers walked beside them. No royal guard held the keys alone. Cecily watched the red-gold warmth disappear down the snow road. For the first time since Mara's death, fruit from her orchard traveled toward the villages without passing through a locked ministerial room. Auberon stood several paces behind her. He did not reach for her. "The terraces remain under crown seizure," she said. "I know. Mara's death still says natural shortage." "I know. The orchard record still names failure." "I know. Then do not mistake opened crates for justice." "I do not." He ordered a public hearing for the following morning on the blackened crown ash terraces. Mara's death finding, the Rowan classification, the land seizure, and the future custody of every fire-pear grove would be judged where the roots had grown. At sunrise, Cecily carried Mara's living rootstock into the hearing circle. Auberon arrived without his provision seal. Maud arrived under witness guard, not in chains. Before the crown could speak, Cecily placed the preserved root on the empty land. "No tree enters this soil," she said, "until the law decides who has the right to keep what grows from it." The last living root belonged to the orchard. Whether the orchard would still belong to the crown had become the final question. Cecily made the crown wait until every village witness had taken a seat. Growers stood where uprooted trees had once held the terraces together. Hatchery healers gathered beside the black furrows. The recovered fire-pears were already traveling toward rural areas, and no palace officer could call them back without 3 witnessed keys. Auberon stood inside the hearing circle without his provision seal. Maud Varon stood opposite him beneath guard, still composed, still refusing the easier dignity of confession. Cecily placed Mara's preserved rootstock on clean ash cloth between them. "This hearing begins with the record," she said, "not with mercy." The first judgment concerned the Rowan orchard. The independent soil keeper read the findings aloud. No ember mold had been proved. Salt had been laid in deliberate irrigation channels. The harvest had been removed before disease was declared. The ministry had classified the grove as exhausted, uncooperative, and dangerous before the visible damage appeared. The orchard had not failed naturally. Its official record was corrected. Crown seizure was voided. Ownership returned to Cecily Rowan until she chose another form of custody. Auberon did not speak while the correction was entered. The land had been taken under his order. He did not claim virtue for returning what should never have been removed. The second judgment concerned Mara Rowan. Her final requests were read before the villages. She had identified surviving warmth. She had recorded batch 9 salt. She had requested pears and preservation stock for East Hollow. Her witness standing had been removed by the same office whose inventory she challenged. The survival formula had then been revised with false or unsupported inputs until her hatchery fell beneath the transport threshold. The court record naming her death an unavoidable result of natural shortage was withdrawn. The corrected finding was written in full. Mara Rowan died during a preventable denial of existing winter provisions under the Dragon Monopoly Directive. No record claimed Maud had personally intended her death. No evidence proved Auberon had read Mara's name before the ration was cancelled. The finding named what the evidence could bear. Warmth existed. The system withheld it. Authority for that system belonged to the crown. Auberon stepped forward. I signed the directive. No herald spoke for him. I believed one hand could distribute winter fairly. When that hand concealed fruit, removed witnesses, and described stored warmth as unavailable, I continued to trust the order because it protected the certainty of my rule. He looked toward the villages, not toward Cecily alone. Maud Varon shaped the reports. I gave her office the power to make those reports become reality. The admission did not ask anyone to forgive him. It entered his responsibility where the old record had entered weather. Maud raised her head. You speak as though divided custody will make winter gentle. No, Cecily said. It will make cruelty harder to hide inside efficiency. The judgment against Maud followed. She was removed permanently from Provision Office for concealing inventory from local witnesses, authorizing unsupported soil treatment, suspending a lawful hatchery witness through conflicted authority, and pricing emergency fruit through scarcity figures controlled by her own ministry. The hearing did not convict her of Mara's death or of personally salting the roots. Those charges exceeded the proof. Maud accepted the ruling without lowering her eyes. You will discover that hunger does not wait for consensus. Neither will growers, Cecily said. That was the part your system removed. The future of the Crown Ash terraces came last. Auberon offered to return the land solely to Cecily. She refused. My name should be restored. My orchard should not become another single locked door. She proposed a protected grower's trust. The terraces would be held by the villages that cultivated them. No crown minister could remove a harvest without a grower's seal. No disease classification could stand without an independent soil witness. No hatchery ration could be denied without a local healer's record and a publicly reviewable survival calculation. Every winter store would require 3 keys: grower, healer, and crown witness. Royal dragons would enter the same ranking as rural hatchlings. No hidden priority. No hidden surcharge. No office permitted to define scarcity while controlling the store it called empty. The villages approved the trust before Auberon placed his seal beneath it. He signed last. That order mattered to Cecily. The crown did not create the trust and offer it downward. The growers created it, and the crown agreed to be bound. Mara's rootstock became the first protected holding of the new trust. It did not awaken into a full orchard. Roots required soil cleaned of salt, patient grafting, and years of care. Magic could preserve life. It could not replace labor or the seasons stolen from it. Through the remaining winter, Cecily directed the removal of poisoned earth. Auberon sent palace crews, but they worked beneath grower instruction. He carried soil when told, cut drainage when shown, and never entered the root beds without permission. His dragon received measured fire-pear broth after the rural hatchery lists were satisfied and witnessed. Its inner flame survived. So did the village hatchlings. By early spring, the terraces were ready for one tree. Cecily stood over the planting hollow with Mara's living rootstock grafted onto a young ash-pear trunk. Auberon waited beside her without armor or crown. Years before, he had held a sapling while she packed the soil. Now he did not touch it. "Where do you need my hands?" he asked. Cecily studied him. He had revoked the monopoly, surrendered hidden priority, corrected Mara's record, and placed the crown beneath a law written by growers. None of it returned her daughter. None of it erased the sound of the last tree being torn from the earth. "Hold the trunk," she said. He obeyed. Not too tightly. His hands loosened. She pressed clean ash around the roots. The work brought them close enough for memory, not forgiveness. "I cannot give you what existed before Mara died," she said. "I know. I may never trust the king who ordered this orchard destroyed. Then judge the man by what he does after the order. That will take years. I am not asking for fewer." Cecily tied the graft beneath Mara's seed mark. The first bud remained closed. Spring had only begun. She did not take Auberon's hand, but when the tree stood straight, she allowed him to remain beside it. Above them, young dragons crossed the warming sky toward village hatcheries carrying fruit from stores no single key could close again. And beneath the protected terraces, the last living root began not to seek stolen heat, but to make its own.